Well, hello there, ladies and gents. It's great to see you again. Welcome back to Lessons by the Lake, the Oswego Private Wealth Show. Ryan Ruff here, your moderator. But as always, I've got my right-hand man in Bob Bedreitis, the managing director over at Oswego Private Wealth. And we're going to be jumping into another great conversation today. Really looking forward to welcoming on another one of our really esteemed guests to explain and explore this concept of what is your game plan. Today's guest, we've got Paul Menig joining us, and Paul is the founder of Business Accelerants. And he's been a leading executive, an advisor, consultant, board member, and board director for over 45 years in the manufacturing, the technology, and transportation industries. Just a wealth of experience that he brings to the table. So we're going to be exploring kind of that intersection of a game plan, of course, with, Paul's experiences in those industries, but also the intersection of a game plan and wealth management philosophies, as we typically do with Bob here. But before we bring Paul out and get into the nitty gritty of his life, his world, his expertise, let's say hi to Bob. Bob, good to see you this morning. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. I hope you're doing the same.
Yeah, can't complain. Always a good time when we get together, Bob. Bob, so we got Paul Menig. I just mentioned 45 years of experience in that manufacturing, technology, and transportation industries. Set things up for our audience. Why'd you want to have Paul onto the show and dive into this idea of a game plan?
Well, thanks, Ryan, for that. When I met Paul, I think I met a kindred spirit. Paul is a squash player and a tennis player, two sports near and dear to my heart. And as we all know when it comes game day, it's all about execution. And Paul is an expert in execution. So Paul is focused on accelerating your success. His experience since graduating from MIT spans medical, defense, aerospace, industrial automation, automotive, truck industries. He worked for a number of years as an entrepreneur, as being an entrepreneur within a company. Companies like General Electric, Eaton, Daimler Truck. In the last dozen years or so, Paul has been a consultant to several hundred startups and family-owned enterprises, small-cap public companies, and he took and condensed all of this experience that he has, and it's all condensed and captured in his book, Accelerating Start to Finish: Align the Seven Forces for Business Success. So I can't wait to get started. Paul has a lot to share with us. And Paul, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Bob. And thank you, Ryan. It's great to be here and have a chance to talk and share with people.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, you sometimes refer to sports to get your points across. What do you mean when you say game plan?
Well, it's now, Ryan said that he likes football, as most of us do, and the football season has just started. And I was wondering if anybody has ever seen the coaches on the sideline going like this so that nobody on the cameras can see what they're talking about. And if you look at that item that they have, it is a one-page game plan because that coach, as experienced as he is, can't remember everything in every circumstance, and he will be checking this all day long, and his associate coaches also have it. So to me, that's where I came up with the idea of a game plan, because everybody loves games. They can understand strategy when we're talking about a game. Okay, if the NFL, let's say, or basketball, are you playing a zone defense? Are you playing a one-on-one defense? Now we've got the three-point baskets, which has changed the game and the strategy for the game. So people can understand strategy when they talk about a game, but when they get to talking about their business or their personal wealth, they just, what do you mean strategize? I don't know what you mean by a strategy. So I like using game, and then I found a way to make some letters turn into words. So one of them would be grow and make earnings. Another that you and I talked about, I think is even better, which is gather, analyze, make, and execute. And so when you think about talking about the NFL again, if it's a Sunday game, Monday, the coaches are reviewing all the videos of all the games they can get their hands on, especially of who they're going to compete with. And they're gathering information to figure out What do they have to change in their strategy to beat that team? Then they they gather all that information, they sit down and analyze it, and then maybe around Tuesday or Wednesday, the team is still out doing practice drills and everything else, and they're making a plan. And then maybe along around Thursday morning, I don't know the details, honestly, but then they make a plan and they cascade that information out to the players and the quarterback and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to play this game. Here's what our one-page game plan is. And then game day comes and it's all about how well they do or don't execute in that.
That's
So
fantastic. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
no, so that's how I came up with. I like talking about it. It works whether we're talking about a team sport or like you and I playing quote unquote individual sports of tennis and squash, even though you might have doubles. Um, there's still a whole lot of coaches and mentors. And, after a squash match, I can remember having to go and soak my foot in ice because the coach taped me up ahead of time from all the blisters, said, you're going to go out there and practice anyway. And then afterwards, it hurt like you know what, and I had to bathe it in ice before I could walk back to the fraternity. So I like, I think people can identify better when we call it a game plan than what's your strategic plan? What's your business plan?
Yeah, I love it. I think there was a book out there so many years ago, something like Everything I Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And I don't
Mm,
know about that, but I think most everything I learned on a sports field somewhere, whether it was hockey, basketball, tennis, squash. And I just love the idea. I mean, I knew the difference between strategy and tactics as an athlete before I ever got into the business world. And so I think it's fantastic. So Paul, you talk about the seven forces and how they're important to both business and personal wealth management. Could we talk about that a little bit, your seven forces?
yeah. So if you're going to put together a strategy, whether it's for your personal wealth or anything, I think the first thing you do is you start with gather. So if my wife tells me, for instance, we need a new refrigerator. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is gather some information. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to find out what she wants. She's seen TV ads and there's new features. She probably does not want the one that automatically has the camera and looks inside and automatically orders the food for her. She's not into the technology types of things, but whether it's a freezer on top or a freezer on the bottom, I know will be important. She's short, better be on the bottom. And then I'll also go out and check out what's going on with the stores, what's available in things today. So I have a little graphic that I think will help talk about for business what we are talking about for the seven forces. I came up with this diagram, and the seven forces. So the seven forces start with your customers and everything that they are doing and how you get your product to market or your service. It's your supply chain and everything you use to build your products. You have insurance, for instance, to handle some aspects of risk of disruption, but you also have fire alarms and shower systems in order to put out a fire. We have a lot of market constraints in government. We have competitors, and then technology keeps changing the game on us. And then the last force is everything inside the company, which is the product, the people, and the processes that you have together. And over time, I've put in this picture of the globe because everybody right now is worried about their business. Well, should I hire more people or not? Should I invest in more capital and spend it? But they're looking at the interest rates and they're saying, okay, well, maybe I want to wait to see if the interest rates are going to come down. Maybe I want to see if there's going to be a change in the politics. So I need to know what's going on in the world. And those are the seven forces that you want to take a look at to gather information before you figure out what makes sense for you to do in your business. And I think the same thing applies for you with the wealth management. I'm reading a lot of things right now. Well, okay, should I use municipal bonds again or not use municipal bonds? Should I get 10-year treasury bonds or this? I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal. If you're going to have a real estate investment trust, here's what you should do because they were popular, then they weren't popular, and I'm stuck with one right now myself. I don't know what I should do with it. So, how does that fit with what you're thinking it would apply in wealth management?
Well, let me just start out very sarcastically and facetiously that the best place to get financial advice is to read the paper and see what they have to say because we know they never mislead us or misinform us in any way. So yeah, public information is the best place to create your game plan for money. So sarcasm aside, I mean those are the things we talk to our clients about. And as fiduciary, that's my responsibility. That is my heartfelt responsibility and my legal responsibility to make sure that those things are communicated clearly and that we understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then utilizing my expertise in this area to do that. I would recommend, of course, there's a whole world of people out there who are like to do it themselves and just read articles and even subscribe to newsletters, but I rarely see that go well in the long term. And but you bring up a really great point, Paul. And when you talked about uh, the different people and processes, and let's focus on people for a second because we talk about on the show a lot about the human element, about how people are the most important asset of any business in any relationship, whether it's a family or whether it's a business. And you played varsity tennis, squash, individual sports, yet you talk about teams a lot, admirably so. So how do you connect? How do you connect? Why do you talk about teams so much? And what's the significance of a great team together? And what does that mean to you?
So, if you want to accomplish something in life, in business, with your wealth management, you can never do it all yourself. You just mentioned the newspaper and some people wanting it to do themselves kind of thing. Well, I mentioned it with the squash. So I had a coach, I had a trainer that was helping me with massages and icing and wrapping and other kinds of things. A lot of people in even individual sports have somebody to get into your head because uh, Ryan and I were talking about golf, and golf is played right here between these two parts of your body, only 6 or 8 inches, depending on how big your head is. Um, so in the business world, if I'm a small business owner, I probably have an outside firm that's helping me with HR because the laws are so complex, I can't do it myself. Payroll taxes are hard, and sometimes those two go together. I probably have somebody on the financial side, a CPA or something, to run financials. I have to access legal for a variety of other things with contracts and things. I have suppliers that I'm using with uh, things on the internet and trying to get attention and marketing. I probably have somebody on the outside that's helping me with email campaigns or putting together podcasts or vidcasts, I call them. Uh, so there's a lot of people that make up that team that's in your business. And the same thing with when we're in a sport of any sort. And you said something that rhyme that fit me pretty well when you said we always learned a lot from that. Most people, when they get later in their life, they still remember some assistant coach or something that was just a parent who told them something that made their life and they've remembered it for 40, 50, 60 years. So
No,
that support in the teams make a big difference in our lives.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I still think back to one of the best life lessons I learned from one of my assistant coaches. Wasn't even the main coach. Was if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And in fact, he had instilled a principle where if you were late, within the 15 minutes early or just flat out late, well, you didn't play that day. You weren't a part of the team. You missed out on the action, and you learned pretty quickly that the importance of being a part of that team and one of those great life lessons. So funny you mentioned that.
Another thing about teams, though, is they become peer pressure for you to perform. You become a member of that team and you don't want to disappoint the others on that team. So even at Daimler Truck, we had stand-up meetings every Monday where we had to report on how things were going against what our plans were for the previous week. And you did not want to miss, you did not want to disappoint others. You often had to work with those other peoples to accomplish something. So that that team atmosphere makes it so that 1 plus 1 equals 3 because they work together and create something greater than themselves. So uh, that's why I like the aspect of teams.
Yeah, me too. I absolutely. Paul, you've done so many amazing things in your career. You've helped hundreds of companies, large and small. Um, what's driving you to help others now? What is your why?
Uh, have you ever heard of Simon Sinek?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so in 2009, he did a TED Talk, which is available online on YouTube. You can find it. And he talked a lot about whether it's business or you personally, first find out what drives you, why you want to do something. Then you can figure out how to do that. And then you can figure out what you want to accomplish in your life. So somebody worked with Simon Sinek for a number of years and reduced it all into an application on your iPhone that allows you to, it's like a lot of tests we've all taken, uh, but I find it goes just a different place. It goes deeper into my mind and my soul than those that look at what is your typical behavior that you can observe on the outside. So this system tells me that my why is that I always want to see a better way of doing things. I'm searching for it, and I want to share that and improve everybody as a result of that. I have this knack for being able to see the complexity, much like you would. I don't understand your world with all the different options for wealth management and tax avoidance and everything else that's out there. You and I both take that complexity and we simplify it down for somebody and make it understandable in some fashion. And then once I've been able to make it simple for somebody, then it's clear and we can decide what actions need to be taken, what the strategy needs to be, because it's a lot clearer now. So my way is a better way, finding a better way and sharing it, simplifying things and making it clear so we can take action together.
Yeah, I know when you and I first met way back when, Paul, I know, and I've done a lot of work on my why, a lot of
Yeah.
work on my why. And I remember when you sent me a link to that website to take it, and of course, and I did, and it was wonderful because it was such a clear path, and it just confirmed for me exactly the work I did. It was spot on. It was exactly true. And part of my why, like yours, we're kindred spirits in that aspect too. I like to take the complexity and bring it down to simplify it, not make it simplistic, but to simplify it to make it understandable that we can, going back to the game plan, to execute it. Because you could have a very, very complex and complicated moving parts in your game plan, but fundamentals matter, and we need to get simplify it too. We see that in we have a presidential debate coming up, so I'll date this
Yes.
podcast a little bit. And I think if anyone who's ever debated, if you go in there with 101 ideas in your head, boy, that could be a rough debate for you. You have to have some key points that you want to get across. When you give a speech, same thing. You need some key points, and when you have a game plan to execute, you cannot have the oxymoronic. We have 27 priorities. Uh, very oxymoronic because by definition, uh, priority should be singular, couple at the most. You can't
Well,
have
and
27.
and that's why in my background working in industry and developing new products, um, it's not just a 1 year game plan or a 1 day game plan. At places like Daimler Truck, Daimler Truck has a goal for 2039 right now. Okay, so that's a really long range game plan, but you can only do certain things each year, each week. So, yeah, there might be 27 things you need to do. So, in your world, you need a will, you need a trust, you need medical powers of attorney, you need death agreements on whether you get disconnected from medical equipment or everything else. You don't work on it all at once. You do one, then you get that done and you do another. And even before that, going back to the game plan where the gather, the first thing you're going to ask a client is what is important to you? What do you see? What do you envision for the future? Are you going to have children? Is your business going to be sold? What's going to go on? And that will then help set up that step-by-step plan that you come up with that becomes your game plan that you refer to every step of the way. And if something changes, somebody dies unexpectedly, there's a divorce, in business, it's a partnership that goes awry and you have to disassociate with one another, uh, then the game plan changes and you have to go back and adjust things.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Tyson who said everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yep. Yep. And I think there was a military guy that said something similar, about a military plan not surviving the first engagement with
That
the
makes a
enemy.
lot of sense. So then when you engage with a company, Paul, how do you uncover the most important areas for a company to focus on for improvement?
So I have a tool that you might be very familiar with because you're also an exit planner. And I've had the opportunity with some of my clients to go through the dreaded due diligence for an acquisition. It is horrible. Some of the lists are, I've got one list that's like 285 questions. What are your contracts? Where are your registrations? All these other things that have to be done. Well, this tool will look at 25 areas of importance to a company and how well it is able to sustain its profits, to grow its profits, and to grow the value of the company over time. And that includes such things as how well are you doing with a leadership team? Do you have somebody that can step in and give you a month off from vacation and not have you answering texts every 5 minutes asking for directions? What do you have for a defensible market that you are going after? I love working with small companies that say, well, there's no pizza joint within 5 miles. So, that's great. But what other eating establishments are there that they might go after? Have you thought about that in the thing? Um, do you have the resources, the capital resources? So there's 25 areas that deal with your ability to create profits, your ability to grow, and the ability to create value in your business. Value frequently comes from, do you have defined processes written down that you can train somebody else to do? Uh, for instance, if I die, my wife is up a creek.
Yeah.
Uh, but my son, you know, can come in, but I've not even done as good a job as I should do of documenting all of the passwords, all of the approaches, where the things are located and stuff. We've told him over time, but really, I need to do a better job of writing it all down and putting it in a secure place, both in hard copy in the safe, hard copy in a lockbox, in his hands, as well as perhaps somewhere out on the internet that's protected. So
Yeah.
that tool is called Clarity. It's available at the top of my website to get started to do a self-assessment. I find people who do a self-assessment, sometimes they're harder on themselves than they should be, and sometimes they're a little too lax on themselves to get a real feel for what's done. And once you've done that, you can obviously go a step further. There's some deeper questions you can get into. There's some valuations that can be done. I hope that gives you some idea of how you can do that.
No, that does, and you're also getting back into the human element and how your team can operate. I have found in my experience that many entrepreneurs are very driven, very charismatic, and can just have such natural abilities to do things. But but you really only have a sustainable business, in my judgment, once you systematize that business and communicate to those systems. And I believe those things need to be in writing, and I think you do too.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'll go a step further. I think they should now be visual more often than not. I needed to replace a faucet cartridge on it was a Moen faucet in the bathroom. Okay, well, how do I do that? I was thinking I would take this apart and I put a new washer in there is all. Oh no. I went on YouTube. Somebody was nice enough to record step by step for my particular faucet or faucet style how to replace this thing. And oh no, it's not a 5 cent washer that I might pay $1 for. It was a $50 cartridge that I had
Mm.
to install, but it took no time at all. That's the kind of training that we need, and especially with our computers. And it can all be recorded very easily. There are systems to record exactly what you do with your steps on your keyboard, what you do with your mouse, what you click. If only all those applications people would stop changing their software every 6 months so that you
That's
have to
funny.
re-record it.
Funny. Now, when if I were to ask a business owner how you doing, and he might say, well, or she might say, compared to what? All right, compared to what? And is there something you use to benchmark a company against others in the same industry?
I would say that I typically find three sources for information, depending on the complexity of the business, the size of the business. I did, you may be familiar with this. If I'm dealing with some of my score clients that have Main Street businesses, just to give them an idea for comparisons, I have this book. Are you familiar with it from your exit planning at
I
all?
am not. I am not. No.
Okay. I don't recommend that they go buy this because it's like 150, 200, probably $250 now. And even though this says 2017, it's still accurate enough. And it gives details on profits, sales, manpower, and a variety of other things by NAICS, North American Classification System, for people. So that's one resource I'll use. The other is I don't know if you're familiar with the Risk Management Association. They have reports that they can generate by NAICS as well that are available. And banks use those when you're looking for a loan. They will use that to see how your application compares to the best in the breeds kind of thing. But then you get to the higher level types of things. Maybe you're a large middle business, 500 million or something. Now I have to find some sort of industry benchmark report of some sort. Now it might come from a company like IBIS, which I can access through a variety of sources for free. They're so. And then sometimes I'll actually have to go out and buy a $5,000 report that has been very specific to that particular market to find where the opportunities are and what's going on. So those are the three major ways I'll help benchmark somebody against their peers.
Yeah. One of the things that we do here, Paul, is when we do business valuations, we do look at the NAIC codes, and we have a very robust, sophisticated software system that we use that is not only creates the valuation to say your company's worth X, Y, or Z, but we also compare it to the industry and let them know in specific areas, return on equity, return on assets, uh, we have 10 dials, and we will also compare them to the industry and say you're above average, you're at average, you're below average. And what I've always found fascinating about that report is we're doing it primarily, the business owner wants to know, what's my business worth? For whatever reason, they may be buying insurance for a key man or for a buy-sell agreement. They may be just wanting to have a valuation to know the state of their flocks. They may be considering a sale, and that number is important. But it always has fascinated me, and I love it, is that they start looking at those dials. And I'll tell you what happens every single time. There are 10 dials and they're above average, average. They zero in immediately. Where are they below average of their industry? And I just see the wheels turning, and I know they almost can't get out of that meeting fast enough to go back to their team and say, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we need to work on today to increase the value of our company.
Well, and sometimes focusing on where you're below isn't necessarily the best way to improve your value, because there might be something where you are exceeding the industry and you might be able to capitalize on that and take that further.
Yeah, no,
Um,
you make a great point. I do believe the human nature. If let's go to tennis. I've got a world class serve and a forehand, but my backhand breaks down under pressure. What am I going to work on? Just make my forehand even more world class, or am I going to maybe spend a little practice time on my backhand to get that up to speed? Right.
well, I'll stick with that too. And how many people have you seen learn to exceptionally well run around their backhand on a court now? The
uh,
players today are very different than what you and I were when we were in our teens.
uh,
I thought of another source that I use for comparing things and helping people understand where they are. Um, they'll think they're growing, for instance, and I'll have, just simple. What has been the growth overall of GDP? How are you doing against GDP? So many people thought they did well from 2010 with the Great Recession through 2020, the start of the pandemic. And if you look at it, they never raised prices. Their costs went up, and they were actually, yeah, the revenue was up. Their profits were down below the industry just because they weren't keeping pace with the economy in general. I particularly like being in the truck industry. I like PACCAR. Up in Seattle is their headquarters. They make the Kenworth and the Peterbilt trucks. Uh, they keep track of a lot of things, and in their annual reports to the public, they show how they compare against other public companies. And that does remind there's some financial resources online where you can create your own stuff for public companies and do tracking all kinds of statistics. Alpha sites is what I'm thinking of that I've used. And I'll take a private company and say, okay, you're in this business. Well, let's find a couple of public companies that you would say are in your same sort of business. Let's take their public information and compare to your private information.
mm, that's really interesting. I one last question that I have for you today, Paul, is you and I have talked in the past about you're a big advocate that private companies should have a board of advisors or a board of directors. What do you see as the value of having a board of directors or board of advisors?
Uh, in many ways, it goes back to the team. What I'll often see in a small company or even in a large company is the guy that's in charge has some background. Often I've learned because of their ability to work with people, people who come from sales will do a great job of getting to the top of a company. Now, they may not be very good with the financials. They may not be very good with the legal. They may not be very good with the engineering. So obviously within their business, they have the CEO, and then they have, the chief engineers or the senior vice presidents or whatever it might be, reporting to them. The board is another place for them to go to get expertise in other areas, in other industries, perhaps, to help them with being able to handle all of the issues that they have tactically as well as strategically for their business. There's somebody out there that has been through that, done that, that knows a different aspect of business and what to look out for. And public companies have that. Nonprofits have that. Private companies should have some team of people called a board of advisors or a formal board that can help them. And studies that I have seen say that those people that have those are likely growing profitably twice as fast as anybody else.
Well, fantastic. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your expertise. I think we could go on and on. I think you have so much to share, but really appreciate having you on the show today.
My pleasure. And if anybody wants to reach out, my website, businessaccelerants.com. I'm lucky to have an unusual name, Paul Menig. So there's only one other in the world on LinkedIn, and it's not me. So you'll find me all over the internet, and my email's available as well. So.
Fantastic. And Bob, for anybody out there in our audience that would enjoy a good conversation with you and your team based on anything they heard today and kind of that intersection of accelerating their business and the wealth management, what would be the best way somebody can open up a dialogue with you guys?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, please go to our website, oswegoprivatewealth.com, and you can engage with us there, including scheduling a time to talk. And I'd love to talk to anybody who found this conversation interesting and maybe wants to talk a little bit more about it.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, appreciate both your time there. That'll do it for today's conversation. So, folks, we're going to take a final moment and thank you, our audience, for carving some time out of your busy schedules to be with us and join us on the conversation today. If you enjoyed today's discussion with Paul Menig, you learned a thing or two surrounding this idea of a game plan, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you checked us out on today so that you don't miss out on any of these great conversations where Bob and I explore wealth management concepts or bring on one of our esteemed guests and dive into their unique expertise so that you and yours can benefit from it. Before Paul and Bob, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long now, but we appreciate you stopping by and being with us on Lessons by the Lake.